My wife was influenced by misandrist colleagues and even faked evidence to frame me for cheating. So I taught her a lesson that left her in tears. My wife, 31 female, and I, 34 male, have been married for 5 years. We were in a serious relationship for 3 years before that, and she was the one who wanted to get married as soon as possible so she could start a family. We went ahead according to her plan and made sure she was married before 30, even though I wasn't too keen to get married, not because I didn't love her enough, but just because I'd always been kind of anti-marriage since my parents were divorced, and I'd never wanted to end up like that. But I also didn't want to lose my wife, so I went along with her life's plan and married her. She wanted to have kids before 35 because she didn't think that after 35 she'd be willing to go through pregnancy. That was reasonable enough. However, a couple of months ago, I sat her down and had a serious discussion with her and told her that I just didn't think that having kids was a good idea right now because both of us were in a great place, and I just didn't feel ready to be a dad. Surprisingly, she said that she felt the same way and told me that we could just adopt later on in life or opt for surrogacy, but for now, she wanted to live life on her own terms too and didn't want to be bogged down by kids. So, we were on the same page at the time, and we decided to remain child-free for the time being. I believe that the reason she changed her mind at the time was because she had just started working at an online magazine for women specifically, and a lot of her colleagues were single women who were a lot younger than her. The older coworkers were either divorced with grown kids or the ones who were married and around our age. Very few of them had children. I wasn't sure of it at the time, but now I'm certain that that was it. The culture of her new workplace was kind of misandrist, if I'm being honest, and it was all very I hate men. I didn't care about it initially because I love my wife, and I'd like to think that before she started working at that magazine, she did love me as well. So, I wasn't worried, and I like to think of myself as a modern feminist man, which is why I believe that whatever her colleagues believed, she wouldn't fall for it, and it definitely would not extend to me. But I was unfortunately quite mistaken. I'd read some of the articles that my wife and her colleagues would publish on their website, and it would always take me by surprise because empowering women was one thing that I supported, but their magazine was pretty openly misandrist and would even put down other women who would choose to get married and opt for a more traditional way of life, which I thought was kind of strange. I'm not an expert on gender studies, but I didn't feel very comfortable with the kind of content my wife was involved in publishing. We even discussed it several times, but she always reassured me that it was just her work and she didn't actually share the same views as her colleagues, so I felt better about it. However, recently she's been sort of distant from me and had been refusing to spend time with me. She'd claim that she was tired, but then she'd stay up for hours later talking on the phone or texting her coworkers. I feared she was losing interest and tried to organize date nights, but she'd complain that I was trying too hard and she felt smothered. So, I stopped that as well and decided to give her some space and focus on my work instead, like she was. I think that's what backfired on me in a way, because a week ago, my wife sent over divorce papers that she'd filed. I was also served with a restraining order, which meant that I couldn't exactly contact her. At least she'd had the decency to send me an explanation in the form of a letter and a picture through her lawyer of me hugging my ex-colleague who recently quit her job and moved to Colorado. That's the proof that my wife had, and she mentioned in the letter that she couldn't forgive me for cheating on her and that she now had to leave. The restraining order was because she didn't feel safe around me anymore since apparently I'd been threatening to hurt myself if she ever left me. So, she'd already moved out of the house and wanted me to stay away from her. Now I'll explain why everything is in double quotes now. So, of course, the contents of that letter are not true at all. She knows it, the lawyer knows it, and so do I. I'm guessing she made it all up to make the divorce easier for her monetarily and otherwise. It's my word against hers since there was no tangible evidence of whether I'd done anything of the sort or not. As for the cheating, she knew that I was going to attend my coworker's farewell party because I told her about it. Even the image that she used as proof against me was one that I'd shown her myself, and it had been put up on social media by my coworker herself, so it wasn't like a secret or anything. I deduced that she'd been influenced by her so-called squad of single coworkers who believed that all men were inferior to them for some reason. I wanted to feel bad about it, but more than upset, I felt livid that my wife was doing something so extreme like this just to get away with a divorce. We've been together for 8 years almost, and she hadn't even deemed me worthy of an explanation or even the truth. I was 100% sure that she was going to come after me with her lawyer to try and get all the money from me because my wife always has been a little materialistic, but this was really low and disgusting tactics. I wanted to call her or contact her somehow and confront her about her lies, but I decided not to because that wouldn't be good for the restraining order case. The entire night, I just kept wondering about what I was going to do next. Of course, I'd already spoken to my lawyer immediately after I received the notice for the divorce and restraining order, but even apart from that, I felt the need to do something. I knew there was no way she was going to get that restraining order against me since she didn't have a legal leg to stand on, but it still irked me that she was doing this to me at all. I couldn't call her to talk to her directly, so I tried to think long and hard about what I was going to do next. Then, after a lot of contemplation, I decided to call my father-in-law. Now, this is a big deal for several reasons. The first is that my father-in-law is a strict disciplinarian since he was a war veteran, and even as a grown adult, I'm scared of him. Even my mother-in-law is terrified of him, and he's kind of a dictator in his home. I usually avoid speaking to him as much as I can, not because he's scary per se, but he's very temperamental and has been known not to mince words and hardly even smiles unless he's around his family. It had taken me a long time to get him to like me somewhat even after my marriage. Despite that, I still didn't feel very comfortable with him, but the situation called for it, and I couldn't just let this happen simply because I was scared to talk to him. I knew that he wouldn't appreciate whatever my wife was trying to do and would definitely take some action against her. So, I called him and told him all about what had happened. I half expected him to explode at me, but he only said that he'd look into it and then hung up without saying anything else. I had no idea how exactly he was going to look into it or what he was going to do to fix the situation, but the very next day, it was all cleared up for me with one text from my wife. She told me that she was now ready to talk to me and had already spoken to her lawyer to cancel the divorce proceedings and the petition for the protective order. I didn't understand what was going on at all and what had led to this sudden change of heart overnight. So, once again, I decided to call my father-in-law because I just didn't want to talk to my wife. I asked him what exactly he'd done, and at first, he told me to mind my own business, but I demanded an explanation because his daughter couldn't just toy with me and my feelings this way. It took me a lot of guts, but I did say it to him. And after a few seconds pause, he told me that he told my wife that he was going to cut her out of his inheritance. It wouldn't have been a big deal, but recently my father-in-law had come into a lot of money because he joined his sister in her business, and they were doing quite well. He'd planned to inform us over dinner that weekend, but now, after he got to know what his daughter had been up to and her completely immoral and unethical behavior, he'd canceled his plans and was already meeting his lawyer to change his will. I was shocked that he'd made up his mind so quickly, but he explained to me that his daughter's materialistic streak had always been an issue with him, and he could no longer turn a blind eye to it just because she was his daughter. Apparently, this wasn't even the first time that she tried to pull off something like this because when she was in high school, she got in some trouble with one of her friends because she'd borrowed money from her and then refused to return it, claiming that she'd never borrowed anything at all. But her dad could see through it. He paid off her friend at the time and tried to explain to my wife that she couldn't just take money from people, but she turned it around on him and told him that if he'd been a little less stingy, then she wouldn't have had to borrow money at all. Since then, money has been a point of contention between them, and what she was trying to do with the divorce was obviously a very blatant attempt at taking over all our collective wealth, including our home. She even admitted that to him when he called her to confront her about it, and she told him to stay out of this because she was going to walk away with all the money and the house and the divorce because she couldn't carry around the weight of a dead weight husband anymore. I'm not joking, she said that about me, which is so funny because if anything, she's the one who's a dead weight burden. I thanked her father for telling me the truth even though it's been ridiculous that he'd kept things like this from me for so long. Then, I texted my wife back saying that I was glad that she decided to file for divorce and that now she could live her single dream with her loser colleagues, and then blocked her. After all, she'd been the one who not only tried to divorce me and take over all our hard-earned money but even tried to frame me as a threat to her just to make the divorce settlement and alimony easier to claim. In case anyone is still wondering how I'm so sure of why she did what she did, I just remind you guys that I was with her for close to a decade, and I know how her mind works. I also know how her colleagues were toxic as hell, and she's quite easily influenced, and the signs were always there, but I'd chosen to ignore them. I'm just glad that at least my father-in-law came to his senses and finally told me the truth about his daughter even though the realization happened a tad bit too late, but it happened nevertheless, and I was grateful for it because in a way, he did save me. Unfortunately, it didn't end there, and I think that's why I'm here for a fresh perspective right now. After I blocked her, she still tried various ways to talk to me, including fake profiles and even using our common friends to get through to me, but I shut it all down and made sure everyone knew that I wasn't willing to communicate with her at all, so they were better off not trying to get to me at all. I was in talks with my lawyer already, and we were about to file for a divorce, but then out of nowhere, my wife decided that she was going to come back home. Now, don't ask me why she didn't do that earlier because that's something I don't have the answer to, but a day before yesterday, she came back home and told me that I could still file for divorce if I wanted to, but first I had to fix her relationship with her father and make sure he doesn't change his will, and also let her stay in my house until she's able to find accommodation for herself. It was ridiculous that she even expected that of me, and I instantly said no and told her to leave the premises or I'd call the police. but she remained rooted to the spot and went on arguing with me. She accused me of being selfish and said that I should forgive her because it was all just a mistake and that she'd been carried away by her friends at work. I told her that I might have forgiven her if she'd done something inconsequential, but this was not something petty and harmless. To even expect that she could just show up and all would be forgiven was very stupid of her. I told her to leave once more, but she refused yet again and told me that the least I could do was talk to her dad and make him forgive her so she'd at least have a place to live. The sheer audacity to ask me to fix her relationship with her father when she's the one who messed up so badly is what got to me, and here's where I might have screwed up a little. In the heat of the moment, I turned around and told her that she was nothing more than a gold digger, and even her father agreed, which is why he helped me instead of her. I even told her that her dad was right to cut ties with her because nobody deserves to have a nasty, immoral bitch of a daughter like her, and then slammed the door shut right in her face. It was very satisfactory at the time, and I didn't hear from her for quite a while after that, until yesterday, when her dad called me up to inform me that she'd shown up at their place late at night and had been sobbing for hours. She was devastated and was acting quite hysterical, which is something none of us had ever seen happening because she was usually quite even-tempered. She was cold and cruel when she was angry but never one to just start crying. Apparently, when she showed up at her parents' place, she'd been saying that she wanted everything to stop since nobody loved her and she'd failed everyone in her life. They eventually had to give her medicines to calm her down because things had been that bad. My father-in-law didn't like the fact that I told her about how he decided to tell me the truth and said that he believed that it would be confidential. I didn't understand why he thought so because he'd also played a role in bringing about this situation. As far as I'm concerned, he should have come clean to me about his daughter's tendency to go above and beyond just for money like a decent human being, but maybe his disciplinarian attitude was just for show, and his morals didn't come into play when it concerned his daughter. I told him that I didn't know him, and neither did I promise him confidentiality at all, so he shouldn't have expected anything from me. He got pissed and then accused me of ruining his daughter's life because apparently I'd caused her breakdown, not her own dishonesty and crooked ways, but I was the one responsible for her mental state right now. For some reason, I don't know what to believe, and I thought that maybe a stranger's perspective could help me out here. So, Ida for telling my wife that her father was the one who exposed her after she tried to frame me and take over all my money by filing for divorce and claiming that I've been cheating? So about a week has passed, and I've not been in touch with my wife yet, but I know for a fact that she's been served with a divorce notice that I filed a couple of days back. I decided that I was really not at fault here in any way whatsoever. She wanted to have this single life? Fine, she could go ahead and live however she wanted to, but after what she did to me, I was not taking that risk again and letting her continue to be a part of my life. She turned into a liability, and I just cannot have that in my life at this stage. I'd always led my life the way she'd wanted me to, but only now I realized how messed up that was for her to even expect, and it's kind of on me too that I just went along with it without ever questioning why everything always had to go according to her plan. I was more of a go with the flow kind of guy, and so I didn't really have a plan at all, and that's why I just went along with whatever she said and did whatever she wanted me to. If I'd known that this would come and bite me in the back someday, then I never would have fallen for it at all. I'm still reeling from the shock of it all, but I'll get over it eventually because she's just not worth it. The last couple of months had been the worst ones of my life because of the emotional distance that had come between my wife and me, but now I won't have to deal with that or her anymore. There's no uncertainty about the future of our relationship now because there is no relationship at all. I don't know what she's doing or how she's been because I've blocked her and my father-in-law both since neither of them care about anyone apart from themselves. I can't shake the feeling that the past 8 years were completely squandered on that dreadful woman who turned my life upside down. I'm convinced there will be some kind of fallout from my actions. Given how my wife operates, she's incredibly methodical and vindictive, so she won't simply allow the divorce to proceed without plotting some form of retaliation. My main concern is figuring out her next move. If she crosses into illegal territory, I'll eagerly pursue legal action against her right alongside the divorce proceedings. It would be a fitting turnaround, especially since she attempted something similar against me, but unlike her fabricated accusations driven by greed, I'd have legitimate grounds without resorting to deceit or framing someone who's done nothing wrong. Regrettably, I'm circling back to this topic, but it seems I won't have a strong case to haul my wife into court after all. What she's up to doesn't qualify as outright illegal because she's steering clear of direct defamation. Still, it's immensely irritating and disruptive. She and her clique of unhappy, unattached colleagues are churning out articles that subtly allude to me without naming names. The latest one paints a picture of husbands who only show affection when their partners conform to their every whim, labeling them as profoundly toxic, which is a gross misrepresentation. She wove in a few personal stories from our marriage, details that aren't enough to pinpoint me explicitly, but they're close enough to sting. It's frustrating beyond words, and I desperately wish there was some judicial remedy to put a stop to it. I even consulted my attorney on the matter, but since I've shared my side of the story on Reddit myself, I lack the ethical superiority to challenge her. Consequently, she can likely keep posting these veiled jabs, and my only option might be to tune it all out. What other choice do I have? On a brighter note, she's filed her response to the divorce papers. She's not fighting the dissolution itself, but she's pushing for a hefty financial settlement and full ownership of our home. In my view, she doesn't merit a dime or the property, and I'm determined to fight tooth and nail to ensure she walks away empty-handed. It won't be easy, but I'll invest every ounce of my energy into prevailing and putting her in her rightful place. However, amid this contentious divorce battle, I also stepped away from my previous job to launch my own venture, which kept me occupied in the most productive way imaginable. Adapting to singlehood after envisioning a lifelong partnership with someone who now resorts to spiteful writings just to provoke me was challenging, yet I navigated through it resiliently. The divorce decree was finalized a couple of weeks back, and as I anticipated, I succeeded in keeping the house under my name while dodging any alimony obligations. We demonstrated convincingly that her demands stemmed from pure avarice rather than necessity. She wasn't in dire straits financially. I can only imagine her seething resentment over the outcome, but that's her burden to bear. Now, I'm poised to embrace a fulfilling existence free from her influence, and the sense of liberation is overwhelming. I'm truly thankful for how things turned out. With that chapter closed, I'm committing to a more enriched life ahead, unburdened by the turmoil of recent months. Penning this reflection stirs up a whirlwind of emotions, but reaching the end fills me with profound joy and relief. Reflecting deeper on those 8 lost years, it's like waking from a prolonged nightmare where every day blended into a cycle of unfulfilled promises and growing resentment. I poured my heart into the relationship, believing in forever, only to realize it was built on shifting sands. Her cold, strategic nature wasn't apparent at first. It revealed itself in subtle manipulations that escalated over time. Now, anticipating her backlash feels like bracing for a storm. Knowing her patterns, she'll calculate every angle to inflict maximum discomfort without overstepping legal bounds. But if she slips into something prosecutable, like harassment or fraud, I'll seize the opportunity to counter with evidence-based claims, turning the tables on her hypocritical attempts to smear me for financial gain. Coming back to update on this saga, the realization hits hard that legal avenues might be closed off. Her actions skirt the edges of propriety without crossing into slander, making it a gray area that's maddeningly untouchable. Teaming up with her band of disgruntled peers, they're crafting these pseudo-journalistic pieces that echo our private disputes. That recent article, for instance, dissects the archetype of the controlling spouse who withdraws love when independence asserts itself, twisting our shared moments into cautionary tales. While no one could sue based on anonymity, the familiarity breeds paranoia and annoyance, eroding my peace bit by bit. I've yearned for a way to silence this passive-aggressive campaign, but options seem scarce. My lawyer's advice was sobering. My own online venting on platforms like Reddit mirrors her behavior, stripping me of any claim to victimhood. It's a stalemate where mutual exposure cancels out leverage, forcing me into reluctant acceptance. Ignoring it becomes the default strategy, channeling energy elsewhere instead of fueling the fire. Meanwhile, her divorce counterclaim arrived, conceding the split but inflating demands for assets and the residence we once shared. Her entitlement baffles me. After all the deception, she shouldn't receive rewards. My resolve hardens. I'll marshal resources, consult experts, and build an airtight case to deny her everything, proving justice in the process. In the thick of this ordeal, quitting my stable job for entrepreneurship added layers of intensity, but it was empowering. The hustle of building something from scratch provided a welcome distraction from the emotional wreckage. Transitioning to solitude after years of companionship tested my resilience. Her ongoing subtle attacks via articles felt like salt in the wound, yet I adapted by focusing on growth and new routines. When the judge's gavel fell 2 weeks ago, vindication washed over me. Retaining the home symbolized reclaiming my space, and evading spousal support hinged on exposing her motives as mercenary rather than need-based. Her financial independence undercut her pleas, leaving her fuming in defeat. Schadenfreude aside, it's her consequence to grapple with while I chart a path of independence and joy. This closure brings immense gratitude. Emerging from months of strife, I'm eager to redefine my days with purpose and positivity. Documenting this journey evokes a torrent of feelings, regret, anger, triumph, but concluding it here ignites unbridled happiness, ready for whatever comes next.